we're gonna do something a little different today. So I've been sick for like a week straight, which should simply be illegal in the summertime, I feel. I should be outside frolicking, not stuck inside watching yet another episode of Anthony Bourdain, as amazing as that show is. I've been going a little stir crazy, you guys. And needless to say, because of that, I also haven't had the brain power to even attempt to film one of my usual researched commentary style videos. So today, I'm gonna do something that I've wanted to do for a while, also partly in celebration of 25,000 subscribers to this channel. Absolutely mind-blowing. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to each and every one of you for being here. I feel like this is a really cool little community that we're growing, and I don't know, I just have so much appreciation. I'm gonna have other videos in the coming weeks and months to celebrate more so, but I thought it would be fun to do a little more personal video today. And what more personal thing to do, at least for me, than go through my record collection. Gen Z, as you may know, or you may not, now you'll be aware, Gen Z has been proliferating the purchasing of physical vinyl again, and as a token elder Gen Z, I am no different. I have started having a little bit of a vinyl collection here. It's quite heavy, and this actually isn't the extensive collection of it, but I have been a huge music fan since growing up. My family, big music family, my dad in particular really raised us on a couple bands, and one of the reasons that I haven't made a record tour video yet is because there's always been this key omission. I didn't have a band or a physical representation of a band that is really, really crucial to understanding me, to understanding Kate. Also, if this is your first video, hi, my name's Kate Cassidy. Welcome to my channel. This is not like my other content. But anyways, I've kind of been waiting for the moment to make this video for when I finally had that final piece to my collection that really would be a good way to show off my music taste with you all and show a little bit more of my personality. And I think you can learn a lot about someone from their music tastes and what they were raised on. And so I was missing this key band. And on about day 6 of this cold, it was one of those colds where it was progressively getting worse and worse and worse day after day. Like day 2 was worse than day 1, day 3 was worse than day 2. But by about day 6, I finally was able to walk around the block and make it past 2 blocks without feeling delirious and sweating profusely and thinking that I needed to get back inside. And on my stroll for the day, on my outing, wearing a mask, obviously, I stumbled on a record sale on a stoop here in Brooklyn, which was just the most picturesque thing to stumble on for the day. And what was staring me in the face but this record? This record, which completes my collection and finally, oh dear, there's some glare, finally allows me to make this video for you. It was truly a sign. Shout out to Jeff for selling me this Grateful Dead record, because that was really the missing piece, and I think a perfect place to start with explaining Kate and explaining myself through music. The Grateful Dead has been with me since the very beginning. If there are other Deadheads in the audience, in the community, let me know. We're everywhere. But my middle name is Cassidy, as you may or may not have guessed from this channel name. But that is actually a Grateful Dead song. So my parents were living in California in the 80s and 90s, and they used to go from show to show in a VW bus, selling grilled cheese on the lot to buy a ticket from one show to the next. And I think that that is just really, just encapsulates my upbringing. It was definitely this very free-spirited environment. I loved dancing around to the Grateful Dead as a kid, and they've been this through line throughout my life, I feel like. The improvisation of the music, the culture and the community that is built around it by Deadheads and people who are just willing to go out on the road. It's a really wonderful thing. If you're not from the US, you might not be as aware of it because they really are the great American band, I would say. They would always say, we're not the best at what we do, but we're the only ones who do it. They would just hit the road for weeks, months, on years. It was just, like, there's so much that could be said about the Grateful Dead. I unfortunately am a little too young, not to spill my age, but I'm a little too young to have ever actually seen Jerry live, but I have seen Dead & Co. like 15 times now, and once you include Joe Russo's Almost Dead or Dark Star Orchestra, I've definitely seen different iterations of the Dead many times over. If you are, unfamiliar, just get yourself to a live show. That's really where you see what it's all about. But this was just so exciting to stumble on. People don't give up their Dead vinyl very easily. People will hold on to it for years. That's why I didn't have one in my collection. People just hoard it and hold on to it. So this was incredible that I found this. Haven't played it yet. I don't think it's gonna be the best quality. Didn't look like there were any scratches, but Jeff from the Stoop Sale did admit that it's not the best quality, but I thought that it was just like a must for me to grab and hold on to. Here's the interior. And if you don't know where to start with the Grateful Dead, let's see. From this album, this is a live record album, I would say some songs that are must listens to. Oh, there are so many. Start with Playing in the Band and The Other One. Those are two that I would recommend from this album. And of course, Jeff also had a best of the Grateful Dead, which I gladly purchased as well. And from this album, I'd say you should definitely give a listen to Dark Star and something that is not on either of these, but I think is just a really good place to start with the Grateful Dead if you're unfamiliar, is Morning Dew. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. The Dead are all about jamming. They're just the purest Americana jam band, and something that I love about going to see a band like that live is you'll be 15 minutes into a song and you won't even remember what song you're in, and the way that they artfully move from one song to another and then transition back to the first one that you're in. It is just true skill and mastery of music that I don't think that any other we'll get to actually some other cool examples, but the Grateful Dead definitely really pioneered this genre. They were coming up in the early 60s in the very acid-drenched San Francisco beat scene, and that I think just is so obvious within their music. They actually started out just as a couple guys who were playing the acid tests that were run by Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters, and you can just tell that they were just playing for hours while everyone was experimenting with drugs for the first time, and that they've just been able to capture and hold on to that energy throughout their decades of playing and performing together. And John Mayer also tours with them now in the Dead & Co. iteration of the Grateful Dead, so if you just also want to see a really very talented guitar player in John Mayer, highly recommend going out to a show sometime soon. There's so much more that I could say about the Grateful Dead, but I have to move on or this video will be way too long. Next record that I thought was really important to show is Kikagaku Moyo's Kikagaku Moyo's Komoyo Islands. I wanted to make sure I didn't twist my tongue too much on that one. It is a Japanese psychedelic rock band, which I've reflected a lot on my music taste over the years. I have always loved music. I had a radio show in college where I played a lot of psych rock. Something that I've come to realize about myself is I am very much a lyric person. If there is a song on and it has lyrics that are in English, I am honed in on those lyrics. There have been many times where I'm in a car ride with friends and we're just listening to whatever the bop is of the day. And I like will pause and I'm like, whoa, this song's really deep, or oh my goodness, that was kind of a rude comment for them to make. And the other people in the car are like, what are you talking about? It's just a song. And I just have realized if there are lyrics, I can't not be listening to the lyrics. It's such a distraction almost for me. And I think that people who are typically listening to music just listen a little bit more passively, perhaps, or are more clued into the music. So all this is to say, I really like world music, or music that is not in my native tongue of English, because I can actually pay attention to the music more, and I love the music. So singing in an entirely different language, such as Japanese, is very helpful for me because I don't get distracted by getting so clued into the lyrics that I can actually listen to the musicality of it, to all of the layering, and there is no one that does it better than Kikagaku Moyo. I had the very incredible experience of being, oh, there's a siren that's gonna come by. I'm gonna pause for a second. Gotta love New York City. So where was I? I was on the beach, on a lake, in the desert, at Desert Days 2022. And you cannot make this up. The lineup of the day was Viagra Boys into Kikagaku Moyo, into Tame Impala, playing Lonerism in its entirety, top to bottom. And I was, needless to say, on one, lying in the sand on a beach. There's no way that I can say that. You'll have to read between the lines on that one. But I was absolutely on one, just staring up at the stars and listening to these guys perform. Truly was a spiritual experience for me. It's hard to describe. I think you're just gonna have to listen. You're just gonna have to give it a listen if you wanna have a similar spiritual experience to just such beautiful, beautiful stuff. It's one of those albums that has amazing artwork in it as well. I don't think until I started buying vinyl I could understand how beautiful cover art and album art is. And places to start if you are just getting into Kikagaku Moyo, I would say definitely listening to Dancing Blue. Seeing this song live was truly one of the pinnacles of my life. And then Cardboard Pile. Dancing Blue and Cardboard Pile, that's a good place to start with Kikagaku Moyo. And yeah, shout out to Japanese psychedelic rock is all I'm saying. Next up, we've got 07 When It Falls. This is definitely my most recent obsession. And I don't know why it's my most recent obsession, because this album is literally 25 years old. It's literally over 2 decades old. But it's one of those ones where I just stumbled on it in the last 2 years and went in so deep. My friend introduced it to me late in the night, one night, in what we in California culture called a cuddle puddle. So late night, you've got a couple of your friends and you're all just kind of lying in a puddle together and you don't know where one person's arm ends and the other person begins, and you're all just chilling, listening to music. We got some trippy lights going on the ceiling. And this album comes on and I am floored. It struck me in a way that music hadn't in years, I would say. That's a little dramatic, but it really, really shook me to my core. The production, the layering is insane, and then there are beautiful lyrics on top of it all. It's truly just a delightful listen, and it exposed me to an entirely new genre that I had never heard of before called trip hop. And it is just, if you are kind of into electronica, but also psychedelic a little bit, but also funk, but also love having a amazing female vocalist who's just belting and singing these really heart-wrenching lyrics in some of the songs, then this is an amazing record to listen to, and I highly, highly recommend giving 07 a listen. This is the album When It Falls, and if you are just starting with 07, I would say start with, oh man, there are so many good ones. Honestly, this is a top to bottom listen. This is one of those ones that I think that you have to listen to all the way through. So Warm Sound is the album opener, and Morning Song, that's the album closer. They are both beautiful, but you can't skip over Somersault, Passing By, Speed Dial Number 2. There are just too many good ones on this. So 07. I don't have enough good words about this album. And you have to give it a listen. You should try it out. Give it a listen, you guys. Give it a listen. Okay, next up, we got Jamie XX and what is this album called? I have to Google what this album is called because I don't want to mess it up, and I can't believe that I don't know it off the top of my head. Sorry guys, one sec. This is the behind the scenes of being a YouTuber. The album is called In Color, which makes sense with all the colors that we have on here. I love electronic music for some of the similar reasons that I like jam and I like psychedelic, is that I love when you kind of lose one song when you're transitioning into another because it's just so seamless and there's so much improvisation and there's just that ability to have fluidity across songs, I think is a really interesting thing, especially if you're going to see a show live, and Jamie XX does an incredible job of this live. So this is an album that I just had to run and get after seeing him live for the first time at a very interesting Coachella in 2021. I have a lot that I could, 2021, 2022, one of those years. Very interesting Coachella. My California music festivals, that could be stories in and of itself, maybe for another day. But this album is just really incredible. I don't have enough good words for it, but I think that that's another thing that I really appreciate about electronic music is the fluidity of it. But this one also is just an amazing place to start with Jamie XX. There's so many good songs. And I would say if you are starting out, some of the songs that you have to listen to, I mean, Loud Places. If you probably know Loud Places, even if you don't know it by name, you've probably heard it. Gosh, album opener, and it is a banger. And also Girl. These are 3 songs that I think are incredible places to start if you are unfamiliar with Jamie XX or haven't listened to this album before. You are in for a treat. I'm jealous. I remember the first time hearing this album. This is one of those just striking ones where I remember so vividly hearing it for the first time, and it was really, really such a special experience. And I remember hearing this album and listening to it just on repeat the entire plane ride. Whenever I'm on a plane and I got something going on repeat, that's how you know it's got me very hooked. And Jamie XX has that power over me. I'm actually seeing him soon in New York City. So if you're gonna be at the Under the K Bridge show, if you see me, say hey. Speaking of someone else I'm also gonna see pretty soon here in New York City, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Flight B741. This album, getting out of the glare. This album, I got this record because I saw them last year touring for this record, so that's why I have this one. It isn't, honestly, it isn't, no, it's a fantastic one, but it isn't my entry point to King Gizzard. I think what's important to know about King Gizzard is they have been consistently putting out multiple albums every single year for over a decade now, So the discography is so deep that it's honestly overwhelming for me to even know where to start. And so with King Gizzard, I think everyone has a very personal relationship with this band because you have to have an entry point album to the band. And I had been familiar with King Gizzard for years because I was a Tumblr kid in high school, which probably surprises no one. I was a Tumblr kid. I had my little music-y Tumblr where I was, you know, retumbling or whatever, different bands and songs, and I was writing different music pieces. Like, that was some of my original content creation for the internet, is I would do album reviews and stuff like that and put that on my Tumblr. So I'd been familiar for a while, but it took, again, being in the desert, on the lake, under the stars at Desert Days 2022 and seeing them live, that really brought it all together for me. It truly another just incredible experience. The entry point gateway album for me was Omnium Gatherum, which isn't this one, but this one is just a really, really fun one as well. Like, there are just so many fun songs on this album. They have such broad range in their music, from very classic psychedelic rock to more garage rock to full-on metal and thrash, and it's just loud and noisy. And here are the guys. Here are the guys, just for you, just for a visual. They're all these Australian, you can just tell they're like such good friends and they've lived lives together, and it's so, they've got a really good chemistry on stage, but there's just a bunch of them. So you gotta imagine there were like multiple people banging on guitars together. It's a really fun live show. Highly recommend it. And if you are starting out with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, honestly, I'd say I have bias because Omnium Gatherum was my entry album, but specifically, if we're going from this album here, some songs that I would recommend listening to, oh, there's so many good ones. Antarctica is very fun. And let's do La Risque. Antarctica and La Risque. Okay, I've been talking for a while. Give me a little tea break. One sec. My goodness, I have a lot to say when it comes to music, and my poor little sore throat after being sick for a week is like, why are you using me this much for the first time in a week? And so it'll just have to get used to it. Get used to not being sick anymore. I'm probably like 92% well, I'd say. One more sleep and I'm really gonna be there, but I just miss you guys. I didn't want to miss an upload entirely, so thank you for bearing with my in-between here, not my usual tech and cultural commentary sort of stuff, but this is fun, and you know, just this is a fun one for me, and I feel like you get to know me a little bit better from this one as well. Leave in the comments what you think of all these records, and also I would love to hear records that you enjoy, especially top to bottom records. I think that's a reason I love albums so much, or vinyl, is just you're kind of forced to listen to it very slowly from the very beginning to the very end, and I find that the best artists and the best musicians are so intentional about how they order things and the transition between the songs, and I think that is really something that strikes me so much in this era of the pop single, and how a lot of pop artists don't really have that same cohesive experience when you're listening to an album. So that's why vinyl is really special to me. The next artist I have 2 records from, and the artist is Twin Peaks. I love Twin Peaks. The first time I saw Twin Peaks, I must have been 14 or 15 years old. I think it was their first time touring. They are a very Chicago-based band, and it was their first time touring. They were opening for the Orwells at Union Hall in DC, and it was me and my friend Francis. We went to the show, and we were so young, and it was our first time being introduced to moshing at a concert, and I just remember feeling like my feet had not touched the floor for the entire concert, and that was so liberating as this high school kid who kind of had a lot of repressed energy in high school. I just, felt a little out of place, and to finally find a mosh pit for the first time, where you could just get swept up in the crowd and swept up in the experience. And these loud, Chicago-based garage rock guys are a little bit older than you, and they're just having the time of their lives on stage, and people are, crowd surfing. It was chaos in the best way, in the way that I didn't know I needed. And so there's this very nostalgic feeling that I have when I listen to Twin Peaks. It's very sentimental, and they have come a long way. So the first album that I have here is Wild Onion, and this is their second album of that era, and it's just so, they're so fun. The other album I have, I guess this is how I can share it. This other album that I have is the Sweet 17 singles, and seeing them evolve from their first tour, their first album, their second album, to their newer stuff has been the most cool experience, because in the early days, they're very much lo-fi garage rock. You can tell that the production was just done probably by themselves in their literal garage, or a local Chicago producer probably helped them out with it. And it's very fuzzy, it's just very raw. You can tell that it's raw. The songs, some of them are like 2 minutes long, because I think it's probably their first time doing any songs. And then over the years, by 2017, they just have a much tighter sound. They're branching out much more. They bring in folky elements. They bring in more ballad type rock, where it's just these really beautiful, I don't know, it's just beautiful songs all of a sudden, after the kind of very low production, very like lo-fi, grungy, older albums. Just to see their range over the years has been so cool. I think if you have a band that you feel like you've been there from the beginning with, it's just such a cool experience to see them evolve over the years. After that first show in high school, when me and my friend went to see them, we were waiting outside, to meet the band, because I did a lot of that in high school. I was very much a wannabe groupie, which I don't even know what I was wanting to be. I was like 13, and I was like, I'm in love with these guys, but they're literally like 17, 18-year-olds. Anyways, I was waiting outside the show, didn't know what my expectations were. I really just wanted to get a little picture. And the band walks out, and they're like, man, a lot of teeny boppers here tonight. And me and my friend look at each other, and we're like, oh, that's so embarrassing. Are we the teeny boppers? Are we the teeny boppers who have been waiting outside the show to get a picture? But nonetheless, we went up to them anyway and got pictures with them way back in the day. It was just so much fun. Just that naive innocence of being young and having a crazy concert experience, moshing for the first time, hanging out to meet the band. That's what so much of my high school music, I feel like, really was, and that is just one of the most special things to me about Twin Peaks. But if you want to start with Twin Peaks on your own, from Wild Onion, I would say, there's so many good ones. Strawberry Smoothie and Making Breakfast. And Telephone, can't forget Telephone. Those are 3 must listen tos, but honestly the whole album is very short. It's one of their first records, so I just recommend giving it a listen if you're into garagey, fuzzy, lo-fi rock. And then this, if you want kind of to hear their more polished sound as they grew older and evolved, I would recommend starting with Blue Coupe, and then We Will Not Make It, Not Without You. Both just beautiful songs. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, next up we got Angel Olsen All Mirrors. This album, and Angel Olsen in general, there's not much else I can say besides, wow, this woman has pipes. This woman can belt, and it is beautiful. It's a spiritual experience. This album is so like guttural in the way that she is able to evoke emotions with her vocal cords. It's just a really powerful, audible experience So if you like a strong female vocalist, you have to listen to Angel Olsen. This is also one of those albums that really showed me how beautiful the art of buying vinyl could be. It's so beautiful. She has all this really cool artwork and photography. And again, it's very much just this amazing, these songs are truly pieces of art. They're truly poetry, so much so that you actually have all of the lyrics printed out inside in the sleeve artwork, and all of the lyrics to all of the songs are there. There's so much here. There's so much to unpack with Angel Olsen. She's definitely a queer icon, and I love her music, but it's not my go-tos. Like, I'd say that the psychedelic, the jam, garage rock, that's much more my go-to music. But every once in a while, if you really want to feel, if you want to be just struck by the power of having emotions overwhelm you, this is an amazing album to do that for. And if you want to start anywhere, I'd say All Mirrors and New Love Cassette. Must listens to. Thank you so much, Angel Olsen, for what you do. And on to the next, because this video is gonna get pretty long otherwise, because I have a lot to say about music. As you can tell, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you for being here, because I can certainly spiel. I have spiels about everything, and when it comes to music, this is why I had a radio show in college. I actually was a radio DJ, and I had my little, it was called, let me give you the rundown. You're listening to WSUM 91.7 FM Madison. I'm DJ Kate, and welcome to The Machine, an hour of psychedelic and alternative rock to start off your Sunday mornings. It's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. I still got it. It was a very funny time slot for me to be playing Pink Floyd and Tame Impala et al. But I actually had some very dedicated listeners who would call in and request things and chat with me about music. I called it the church crowd, because in Madison, Wisconsin, I'm not sure who was up at 9, 10 a.m. listening to my stuff, but I really appreciated it. There's something about having a radio show, and I think that's also why I've really taken to YouTube and taken to this video in particular, because I've realized how much I like talking about music again on video. So, with all that much ado about nothing, here is the next album. This is La Femme's Psychotropical Berlin. I don't know if I'm supposed to censor that, but it's album artwork, so hopefully you can bear with the fact that there's a naked lady on the screen right now. I'll cover it up if you need it to be censored. No, I won't. That feels unnecessary. But this album, to start from the beginning, I listened to the song, It's Time to Wake Up. It was one of those serendipitous moments when Spotify, Discover Weekly actually had it spot on. They were serving me exactly what I needed, which doesn't always happen. I feel like that algorithm sometimes is too repetitive, or you can tell that some artist is paying to enter your Discover Weekly. But this song, It's Time to Wake Up, once again, just rocked me. It rocked me to my core, and I said, I have never heard of this artist, La Femme, before, but same day, I sprinted to my local record store and said, I need the entire album because I want to listen to this artist for the first time, top to bottom, in the way that they wanted me to, and it was just like a knee-jerk reaction. I heard this song, it moved me, I moved my body to the record store, and I got the vinyl, and I listened to the entire album, and the entire album does not disappoint. It is so much fun throughout. Similar to Kikagaku Moyo, this is a French psych pop artist. Honestly, they're very much genre bridging, and they sometimes sing in English as well. And they even have one album that is actually a Spanish album. They have very broad range all around, But I think that, again, just the singing in French really helps me to get into the music and get into the layering and enjoy the album in the way that it was meant to be enjoyed. And that, like, I can't even describe how much that one song got me. Never before in my life have I run to a record store because I was so moved that I needed to get my hands on the physical vinyl. And that happened to me with La Femme. That's the power of La Femme. That's what I'm always saying, and that's what I'll always say. That's the power of La Femme. Besides It's Time to Wake Up, which is a must listen to, other ones, Sur la Planche is wonderful, and let's say Anti-Taxi. Anti-Taxi, oh, there's one that I really don't want to get pronounced wrong. It's in French. A lot of this is in French. Nous et un deux. I never took French growing up, you guys. But that's another one that you should listen to. La Femme, Psycho Tropical Berlin, incredible record. We're on a similar wavelength with Mdou Moctar. Mdou Moctar, Afrique Victime, is another wonderful record. I was introduced to Mdou Moctar at Desert Days 2019, actually, way back in the day in the desert. And he is an artist, and it's either Niger or Nigeria, and I'm going to look it up again because I don't want to get it wrong. One sec. Excuse my ignorance here, you guys. Okay, so he is from Niger. I looked it up to verify. And he is part of a culture called the Tuareg people, and they are traditionally nomadic Berber culture in North Africa, and has this really interesting musical style that is part of their culture, and that's the Tuareg music culture. And it is so incredible how Mdou Moctar was able to take that bluesy desert sound of his native people and that just very unique culture in Niger, and then also bring in this Western psychedelic influence. It's this perfect mix of the two in such an incredible way, and he is such a talented guitarist. I think probably up there with like John Mayer in terms of the dexterity of your fingers that you need to be so incredibly good at guitar. And so if you like artful guitar licks, and you also like singing in French, once again, and you like the mix of Eastern and Western sounds or African sounds with the more Western psychedelic music, then Mdou Moctar is a must listen to. I highly recommend. Oh, I'm gonna pronounce all these wrong again, but a must listen to song is, oh, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, is Chismitin and Afrique Victime. Those are two wonderful songs to start with. My next two records are both from the same artist. I was in San Francisco, where I lived for many years. There's this funny thing that happens where the summer can be one of the coldest times of year there. It can be pretty foggy and pretty cozy indoor times. There's always those really hilarious graphics of when the rest of the country in the US is sweltering with heat. San Francisco is this little moderate haven because we have this marine layer that comes in. But at a certain point, by July, August, I started to go stir crazy every year. You want to get out and you want that heat. That's something that I very much missed. Of course, now it's swelteringly hot in New York, and I'm like, okay, it would be nice to have a little fog every now and again. But none of the matter. By July, August, I think everyone's typically itching to go on little trips out of San Francisco just to get some heat. And so I was on a trip in Petaluma with some of my friends. We drove up there for the day, and it was one of those days where you get out of the car, you've been cold for a couple days, you go to the other side of the bridge, all of a sudden you're hot again, and there's that fun summer energy when it's hot and you don't need to have a jacket and you can just skip through the streets and you're in a new small town and it feels very Americana again, and you're just skipping around with your friends and you're like, this is gonna be one of those times in my life that I remember forever. That's how I felt on this Petaluma trip. And we stopped into a vintage store that had a bunch of records, and I came upon not one but two Cat Stevens, or now I think he goes by Yusuf, albums, and I said, I don't care what condition they're in, I really needed to buy something just to commemorate the day. And so I got these two Cat Stevens albums. I can attribute my mom to getting me into Cat Stevens. My dad was always more of the Deadhead. My mom was kind of a quirky one. She loved like Bob Dylan, she loved Cat Stevens, and her favorite movie was Harold and Maude, which is a oddly dark movie. If anyone wants to watch like a very dark comedy that's also very San Francisco based, Harold and Maude is an interesting cult classic to give a watch. But something that I've always loved about that movie is the way that the entire soundtrack is Cat Stevens. And it's just really fun. It's, again, another very nostalgic, sentimental one, very folksy charm. I don't know, it kind of doesn't fit into any modern genre that I could say, yeah, maybe folk, but you're gonna have to give it a listen. Cat Stevens. Some songs that you must listen to if you're new to Cat Stevens, I would say Wild World, Moonshadow, Peace Train, and Ruby Love. All really, really fun, wonderful places to start. Tea for the Tillerman and Teaser and the Firecat are the two records of Cat Stevens that I have. Another little tea break, one sec. I promise we're getting closer and closer to the end. These stacks are starting to change in size. Next up, we have Fleet Foxes. Fleet Foxes, this is actually a really interesting album art. I don't know if it properly zoomed in there. I'm still getting used to my new camera, but I was trying to subtly look for the name of this album, but no matter. Fleet Foxes is one of those a lot of these have nostalgic value for me. In high school, I'll go back even further. In elementary and middle school, this may come as no surprise to anyone, but I was a theater kid, in particular musical theater. I loved being on stage, and I had this really kind of boisterous personality that would come out on stage, and I just loved it. I was addicted to it as a kid. I just loved getting the audience on my side and wrapping them around my little fingers. But I was very good. I was elementary and middle school good, but I got to high school and I was not high school good. I was not good enough an actor or a singer to ever make it into one of my high school theater plays, which is fine because what it did was it led me to be behind the scenes for the first time. And I was deep in the tech and backstage stage crew. That was my thing in high school. Those were my people. At my high school, it was very much kind of the outsider kids would get together on the weekends and wear all black, and we'd be backstage, and those were my people. Those were my people in high school. Again, as someone who kind of didn't really fit into the mold in a lot of other ways with the people that I was around and surrounded with in high school and in my little city experience, I really found home in the theater. And this album was one of those ones that was introduced to me by some older kids, some of those cool older kids when you are a freshman or a sophomore in high school, and the only way that you're hanging out with the juniors and seniors is because you do this after-school extracurricular activity with them. It was so much fun. I thought that these girls were the coolest, and they were all very hipster, back when this was the hipster heyday, you know, the 2010s. People were wearing their Docs, and they were going to raves, and I thought, this is so cool. I wasn't there yet, but they did a lot of handing down music to the younger folks of us in the club, and Fleet Foxes was very much one of that. We, as a tradition for the stage crew, we would all come together before putting on one of the performances, and we would take over the theater. No one else was allowed. It was very much stage crew only, tech crew only. And we would turn on fun lights, and we would hook up someone's aux to the speakers of the entire theater, and we would blast music. And we would be running around, and some of the music that we played, we did show tunes, but we also were listening to random alternative artists of the day, and Fleet Foxes was one of those ones. So I always have these crazy memories tied to Fleet Foxes of being with these like cooler older kids and feeling so much like I had found my people in an environment where I didn't otherwise fit in. Very much like the hipster Tumblr girl thing, once again, of that 2010s. And I would recommend, if you are starting or if you're new to Fleet Foxes and you don't know where to begin, there are so many goods. This is an album that is packed with bangers, absolute bangers. If you are into folksy alternative, is the only way that I can describe it, folksy alternative, but they have a very unique sound that I highly recommend giving it a listen to. I would say Ragged Wood, He Doesn't Know Why, that is a must listen to, and Blue Ridge Mountains, because I grew up going to the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I highly recommend listening to the song as well. This is a really, really cool record. I love all of these records, but yeah, I can't pick one over the other. Similarly, my high school Tumblr girl self loved MGMT. This is a classic album. This is Congratulations by MGMT. Haven't listened to it in a while, honestly, but MGMT was probably the first band that I would say was my favorite band once I had enough of an awareness and enough of my own taste to choose a favorite band that wasn't just handed down to me by my parents. So growing up, I always said the Grateful Dead, the Doors, because that's the type of music that we were listening to at home. So when you're little, you're kind of just carbon copies of your parents and you're repeating whatever they say. So you're like, yeah, my favorite band's the Grateful Dead. But by the time I was in middle school and starting to develop my own taste and getting very into my Tumblr days, MGMT was that first band that I really connected with myself and I discovered on my own, and I loved them so much. Fun fact, I actually, you're not gonna believe this, one of my fun facts is that I played on stage with MGMT. Yes, I did. It was at the National in Richmond, Virginia. They were doing a contest, a early Instagram contest where you had to actually make a video. And I made a couple videos, obviously little short form videos, to one of their songs from, not this album, from their next album, their self-titled album, MGMT. But I didn't win in DC. I didn't win the Instagram contest in the city that I actually resided in, but thank goodness my parents are very much into music as well, so my dad was happy to drive down to Richmond, Virginia, which is where I won. I had so much animosity when I realized that I wasn't gonna win in DC. And then I actually became friends with the girl who did win. We were all Tumblr buddies together. It was a very funny little like DC music scene, MGMT stans back in the day. We were unreasonably large fans, very much when other girls were into One Direction. I had a One Direction phase, who am I kidding? I'm not above that. But when other people were going deep into One Direction or 5 Seconds of Summer or other pop artists of the day that were really, people were diving into, I had the weird obsession with MGMT. That was always, for some reason, that was where my infatuation with a band, in the way that if you're a tween and you're a kid just hitting puberty and you kind of put this fixation on an artist. That's what I did with these guys from MGMT, and I feel kind of bad in retrospect because, you know, they're just trying to live their lives, and I was like, I'm in love with these guys, but I loved their music, so I think that at least there was that. That's just the power of music, once again, really can move you in crazy ways and make you do crazy things, like waiting outside in the rain to try and meet the band. which I did. I met the band. I mean, I played on stage. It was so much fun. I played the cowbell, if you're wondering, for a song that's about 2.5 minutes long, but I had an absolute blast. I actually started, I don't know if this is still true, but I was featured on the MGMT Instagram page years and years and years ago. And it became a big scandal in the comment section because you could see through my shirt a little bit, like it was a bit of a sheer shirt and I had a black bra on underneath. And for some reason, there were Karens in the comment section of the MGMT Instagram page, and they were making commentary about whether or not I should have been allowed to wear a sheer shirt and why a kid was wearing a black bra. It was a very funny thing to have started a whole online stir. I guess you can say I'm a rebel rouser. I guess you can say I've always been pushing the boundaries online. But that's my MGMT story. Love these guys, still love them to this day. They kind of took a couple years off and then they've been putting out a couple banger albums over the last year or two. So highly recommend checking out MGMT. This album, congratulations, is a wonderful, it's just like such a fun album. They bring together so many different sounds. It's like, if you know them from Kids or Time to Pretend, which are their big songs, those were their radio hits, those were from their first album. People had this expectation that they would stick with that kind of electronica, psychedelic pop sound. And this album was basically their FU to anyone who had jumped on board just for that sort of music. And they went super experimental with this album. Just, it's fun, it's psychedelic, it's the descriptions that they have for all of these songs are absolutely madness. You can't see, but I'll just like give you a little teaser. The first song of the album, It's Working, and their little blurb about it is love or confusion, reality, contusion, subterranea or subfusion. The quest begins. That's so classic MGMT of you. But if you're just starting and you want to get into congratulations, I'd say the must listen to songs. It's Working is great. Flash Delirium is an absolute must. You must listen to Flash Delirium. Siberian Breaks is their long song on this album, and if you really want to be taken, if you want to listen to 5 different songs in one song, listen to Siberian Breaks, you're gonna love it. And then congratulations. It's a good place to round it out. The titular song of the album, Congratulations. Gotta love MGMT. Another high school nostalgic one. I didn't put too much thought into how I was gonna organize these, but we're getting into like high school nostalgia deep on this one. Foxygen, we are the 21st century ambassadors of peace and magic. This was another one that was handed down to me by the cooler older girls who were on the stage crew with me in high school. And like they were the introduction, so much fun. There was this festival. This is a deep cut. I don't know if anyone here knows the salad brand Sweetgreen. Perhaps you do, perhaps you don't. But Sweetgreen is in the US. I think if you're in the US and you live anywhere near a city, you probably know Sweetgreen, so that's why I chuckle to myself. For anyone who's outside of the US, Sweetgreen is essentially a salad bowl place, chopped salad. It's like the Chipotle of salad. And they actually started just a couple blocks from where I grew up, outside of, they were just guys from Georgetown University, and they started a couple blocks from where I grew up. And in DC, in my youth, in high school age, Sweetgreen actually put on a music festival every single year. It started out as a small block party, and then it got bigger and bigger, and it went out to this really fun venue out in Maryland, this beautiful grassy amphitheater field, and it was called Sweet Life Music Festival. Sweetgreen, Sweet Life. And the coolest thing about it, I really wish that they would bring it back, in addition to the frozen yogurt. Some might forget Sweetgreen used to serve frozen yogurt, but the coolest thing about this festival is they would actually score incredible artists Sweetgreen, the salad makers, were putting on a music festival with incredible artists. Like, I saw Kendrick Lamar when the only song that anyone knew was Swimming Pools. He was not big, he played in the middle of the day, and I saw him just because these guys had a way of picking these artists before they got really popular. It was really a cool era of time. Again, just that 2010s, why was a salad company putting on a music festival and how were they able to get such incredible artists to come to it? The world will never know, but I loved it. It was such a fun marketing scheme. It was also that era of your life where you're sneaking around and you snuck into you're underage and you brought in a little bit of alcohol that you were able to hide in your shoe, and then you're trying to get the courage to go up to someone who's over 21 and ask them to buy you a beer. And it was just, that's the energy of this festival. And then, well, you are a 13, 15-year-old who probably shouldn't have been drinking, even though you only drank a little bit. It all gets very fuzzy when you're not used to drinking alcohol. Then they're handing out salads. So in the middle of the day at this music festival, when you've had a shooter of wine because that's the only thing that you've been able to sneak in with your shoe, then you have a nice salad in the middle of the day. It was such a funny era of time. But Foxygen was able to see them at that festival, and they're just a really, really fun artist. And when they have this song now that means so much more to me, the song is called San Francisco, and the lyrics go, I left my love in San Francisco, and I feel that. I feel that Foxygen speaking to my soul. I left my love in San Francisco. But other songs on the album that you should listen to, On Blue Mountain is absolutely so much fun. Same with Shuggy. Honestly, there's a lot of bangers on this album. I haven't listened to it all the way through in a while, and it's making me remember that I should give it a listen. No Destruction, On Blue Mountain, Shuggy, San Francisco. That's Foxygen for you, baby. They're so good. Okay, we're getting to the end, you guys. I promise we're getting very close to the end. Thank you for staying along with me if you have. Here are two albums by Temples. Temples is one of those artists that I always thought was honestly going to pop more than they did in the US. They are, sorry, trying to correct the glare. They're from the United Kingdom, as a lot of good music is. Gotta love the UK. Shout out to the UK. If anyone's listening from the UK, love your music. Thanks for the cultural exchange that we have between the US and the UK when it comes to music. What a relationship, musically that is. And Temples is just one of those perfect parts of the cultural exchange that I have gotten to take advantage of. I'm trying to remember when I started listening to Temples in high school. It was that Tumblr era, and I always thought that they were going to be huge. There were a couple bands that I thought would really, really take off. Temples has probably done the best of that era of my life where I stumbled on some music and I really took a bet, and I was like, these guys are going to pop. These guys have done well, but they haven't done as amazingly as I think they deserve. Peace, the band Peace, another UK band that I really thought would pop off, and then Drowners. Those were my three big bets from high school that haven't really done as well as I thought they would. Tame Impala, MGMT, King Gizzard, these are ones that very much took off, so sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. But Temple's Sun Structures was the first album that really drew me in, and they've just been putting out consistently good music since. So these are the other two albums that I have of them. This is Temples, and the album is called Temples, if I am not mistaken. I hope I'm not. I hope I didn't lead you astray. It's not. It's called Volcano. That's the one thing about albums. It's hard when it's very small fine print writing across a psychedelic background to let you know what the album title actually is. So Volcano, and then this album, Hot Motion. Again, it was on the lake, in the desert, under the stars in 2019 when I saw Temples for the first time. And it was after Mdou Moctar, and I was once again on one. And this set, I can't describe how much I was dancing. I was with the guy that I was dating at the time, and you know, you're young and you're in love and you're on one and you're dancing, and it was just jumping around, euphoria. And that Temples always calls back that memory to me, and it was such an absolute blast. So many good songs, and they just have a really cool sound. It's very much psychedelic, alternative, rocky, absolutely fantastic music. There's so many good songs to listen to. Let me just give you a couple from this album. I would say definitely Hot Motion, Holy Horses, and It's All Coming Out. Those are wonderful songs to listen to. And from Volcano, let's see. Ooh, I Want to Be Your Mirror, Oh the Savior, and Roman Godlike Man. Those are 3 wonderful songs to listen to from Temples. Well, that was my collection of the day. If you stayed with me to the end of the video, thank you for being here. Seriously, give me some songs. I would love to hear what sort of stuff that you like to listen to. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about me through this experience. This has been quite the journey for me. This has been a test on my vocal cords after being sick for the last week, but I think I did okay, which is making me feel good. And I thank you so much for being here. 25,000, I am flabbergasted. Flabbergasted is the only word that comes to mind. Thank you for everything. I appreciate you so much. Let's all go listen to some music. Let's stop listening to me. Go listen to this music. All right, we'll talk again very soon. Bye.